If you are a financial advisor working with doctor clients, you already know that your clients look to you for financial leadership. But what does it really mean to be a financial leader? And how can you become a more skilled leader? Well, that is what we're talking about today. If we haven't met, my name is Dr. Vicki Rachner. I'm a retired surgeon, and I've spent the past 15 years helping financial advisors accelerate their growth by working with more doctor clients. Financial leadership, what is it? Well, I enjoy watching Dancing with the Stars. And as you watch these couples go through these beautiful ballroom dances, you understand that the leader is really the person who guides the dance, right? They initiate the movement and they set the pace and they direct the couple through various steps and patterns. As you help a doctor build wealth, think about it as the dance of wealth. Think about the movement and activities that will get your client from where they are now to the financial future that they desire. Maybe you relate to Stephen Covey's definition of leadership. He says leadership is communicating to people their worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. So your doctor clients want a certain financial future. They might not have confidence that they can get there, certainly not on their own, and that's why they've invited you into this dance. They might lose faith that they will get there. They might make mistakes. They might not be able to change their financial habits as quickly as they or you would like them to do. Well, you are there reminding them of what is possible. So, how do you communicate leadership? Well, there are 3 ways. First, there is your body, what you're communicating with your body. Second, there's the tone of your voice. And third, there are the words you use. So let's take this one at a time. We are visual people. We look at other people and get a sense of who they are even before they say the very first word. Now, you might have seen the great TED Talk from Amy Cuddy, who has this idea that our physical posture can inform our moods. A lot of time, our bodies follow our moods. If we're embarrassed, if we're in shame, we will carry ourselves in a certain way. She said, that's not the case. If you want to conduct yourself like a leader, understand that leaders have wide, expansive body language. People who are not leaders have closed, folded body language. So, are you opening up your space? She advises that before a big meeting or maybe a big presentation, people go into the bathroom and assume a Superman pose for 30 seconds so that you can walk into this interaction feeling confident because your body has informed your mind. Second, there is the sound of your voice. Many people have said, I got some voice coach training and it really transformed the kinds of results I get. So are you using your power voice? This is a great investment to make. All right, I will also tell you that one day I was taping a public service announcement and the producer said to me, you ended that sentence on an upswing, which builds curiosity. Let's try it again, where you end on a downswing. That builds authority. So generally, with leadership language, you want to end on a downswing. You want to convey your authority. If you're asking questions, if you are in a discovery process, then the upswing will help you build this curiosity. All right, now we're into the real meat and potatoes. It is the connection prescription. How can you choose the words that will really help you communicate your financial leadership. All right, there are 7 pointers, and we will go through them. Pointer number 1 is set the emotional thermostat. Have you ever been in a situation where you walk into a room, there's 2 people, you have no idea what just happened, but there's a feeling in the room like there was just a bad fight here? All right, our words set emotions. And oftentimes, your doctor clients are going to have the emotion of fear or chaos. It is easy to catch fear. Fear is intended to be communicable. However, you are going to best serve your client when you have them catch your calm rather than you catching their chaos. I remember going to the hospital wards for the first time as a medical student. A code was called in a specific room. So I arrived at that room. There was a sea of white coats. I went and stood right next to my resident supervisor, and he leaned over and he said, "What's the very first thing you do when you arrive at a code?" And I said, "Airway, breathing, circulation." He said, "Wrong. The very first thing you do is take your own pulse." In other words, get to calm. Now, here is a little trick to help you get to calm. It's square breathing. So it's a simple thing. You just breathe in for a count of 4, hold for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, and then be empty for a count of 4. When you are running away from the saber-toothed tiger, you do not have time to exhale. However, when your brain observes you taking a long, casual exhale, it offers evidence that you are safe. So you bring your nervous system back into regulation and you make it easier to get to calm. Number 2, let your client take center stage. So imagine that any encounter with a prospect or client is in a New York theater. There is one chair in the limelight and plenty of seats in the audience. All right, who goes in the limelight? We all have a human propensity to put ourselves there. However, you are a much more effective leader if you put your client there instead. Oprah said that she's interviewed over 40,000 people, and in the end, everyone wants to know the same thing. Do you see me? Do you hear me? Is what I think important to you. And the more that you can communicate that, the more effective leader you will be. We all have to have conversations with prospects and clients, right? Let me ask you something. Who do you think is the more effective financial advisor? Is it the extrovert who gets energy being around people? Or is it the introvert who tends to recharge by being alone? Well, this was tested, and the answer is that the ambivert, the hybrid between an extrovert and an introvert, actually does the best. So how can you conduct yourself more like an ambivert? If you're an extrovert, starting the conversations might not be the challenge for you. However, you might want to do a better job of listening, and you might want to make sure that you don't put yourself in the limelight. If you are an introvert, you probably do a great job of listening, and what you might need to do is use some discipline to have more conversations with more doctor prospects and clients, even if you don't feel like it. I want to mention to you that everyone has beliefs about the nature of money, the purpose of money, how you build wealth. And as an effective leader, it's important for you to find out what your doctor prospect or client thinks. I remember being at an airport. I was going on a long plane ride, and there in the boarding area, this toddler was having a temper tantrum. Well, when we arrived at our destination, we were all waiting for our luggage, and I noticed that this toddler was wearing a t-shirt that said, "For argument's sake, let's assume I'm right." So imagine that everyone you meet is wearing that t-shirt. We all have our beliefs. Our beliefs feel like facts. And if you find that your client is getting stuck, it may well be that they are holding a belief that is keeping them stuck. So explore your doctor's beliefs around money. Number 3, shield your client from complexity. We know that wealth building is nuanced. There are subtleties that you have mastered. And we all want to impress the people we serve, right? And maybe you believe, well, if I just explain all of the complexity, they are going to really appreciate me and my contributions. But actually, if you want to be an effective leader, the most important thing is to simplify. You know that you really understand something when you can explain it to a third grader. So yes, doctors are smart. Yes, they can appreciate all of the subtlety. But if you want to provide strong leadership, keep it simple. When I was operating, my patients and I would have a conversation before going to the operating room. I would tell them where their incision would be, how we would manage pain, how long they'd be in the hospital, and how long they'd be off of work. I told them the things that they needed to know. I did not tell them what kind of suture material I was going to use. That was a subtlety they trusted me with. If they asked me about it, of course, I would be happy to share it. So, as you reflect on your conversations with your doctor clients, are you talking about things that they really need to know? Or are you talking about the suture material? Stick to the basics. Keep it simple. Next, master the fine art of verbal persuasion. Some people just seem to be naturally charismatic, but this is a skill that you can develop. You can learn how to master million-dollar messaging so that your message is more persuasive. I would strongly encourage you to really think about the words that you use. And here is a great trick. When you're speaking with doctors, use medical metaphors. So let's say you make a suggestion about an investment and a doctor asks, is this safe? What you can say is something like, Doctor, I bet your patients ask you whether an operation is safe, whether they're going to enjoy a cure. And I bet what you say is, I would love to promise you that you are going to get a perfect outcome with no complications. Unfortunately, we know that that's just not how life happens. Stuff happens. And I'm going to do everything I can to protect you from those known risks. In a similar way, doctor, I've done my due diligence. This looks like a great investment. I can't make any promises, but I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that you see the kinds of returns that you want. So doctors emotionally understand that differently when you tap into that medical metaphor because they get it. They understand what it's like being on the other side of the question. Next, act from your wisest self. So we are always growing and evolving. If you look at a tree stump, you can look at the rings and see where there were years with lots of rain and lots of sunshine because the rings were thicker. You can also tell where there were times of drought because the rings are really small. You might even see a scar in one of the rings where something happened during that year. Well, we grow and evolve too, and ideally we're functioning from our outermost ring. However, we've all dealt with money since childhood. And sometimes traumatic things happen in childhood. Sometimes they're healed, sometimes they're unhealed. When that occurs, Dr. Neal loved his childhood home. But when he was 8 years old, his family lost the home in foreclosure. And everyone was so upset that they really didn't have time to explain to him what had happened or help him manage his sadness about it. So he was left to deal with this huge adult situation with his 8-year-old coping styles. Now, whenever he faced a financial downturn, he became that 8-year-old again. So you might notice that you've got certain clients who generally do a great job of making rational choices. However, something comes up and they're just not themselves. They react kind of like a child. If that is the case, this is probably exactly what was happening. So you can ask your client, hey, what happened around money when you were a child? What did your parents teach you? Did you have any traumatic episodes that you can remember? Oftentimes, when they just recall, yes, this thing happened when I was 8 years old, they recognize, okay, I'm not dealing with the current moment, I'm dealing with the past, but the past is over. I have car keys and credit cards now. It's a different reality for me. Now, here's another implication. Ever since you were a small child, your parents taught you how to behave when you're around doctors. Don't speak unless spoken to, right? Are you having a hard time initiating conversations with doctors? Is there a voice in the back of your head telling you, don't speak to a doctor unless you're being spoken to? Were you told by your mother, never leave the house without clean underwear, because if you're in an accident? Well, I will tell you that I've been at the surgeon, at the bedside of these car accident victims, and never once have I heard a single doctor or nurse comment on the condition of the patient's underwear. So you can just dismiss that. But here's another way in which childhood experiences can insinuate themselves in your relationship with your doctor clients. Have you ever met somebody? They've hardly said a word, but you just get the sense, I don't like this person, I don't want to be around this person. You might want to ask yourself, does this person remind me of somebody in my childhood that made me feel unsafe? Because usually that is why we get that reaction. I've had financial advisors tell me that when they visit doctors in the office or at the hospital, sometimes a smell will trigger a really, really bad feeling. Again, this could be related to childhood trauma. This is powerful stuff. So please recognize when it's happening. Next, know your limits. One day I got a call from my mother. Honey, I'm sorry to wake you up, but I'm in the emergency room. The doctors tell me I need my gallbladder out. Will you come and do it for me? Well, how lovely to have the trust from your mother, right? But I had to say no for a couple of reasons. One was practical. I didn't have a license to practice medicine in Hawaii. I didn't have privileges at her hospital. But there's a more fundamental issue. We doctors are told that we should not treat ourselves or people we love because emotion can cloud our judgment. So are there situations in which you become emotional? And you could use some help making sure that your judgment is intact. Avoid emotion when dealing with doctor clients. So know what your limits are. Now, it helps if you build a medical dream team. If you have a collection of people who can all help doctors achieve their vision of their desired future. That way you can all live in your zones of genius and count on each other. Last, know where you're headed. So I love playing Chinese checkers, and it's so much fun to set the board up so that you make 10 jumps in a single move. Well, inevitably, when I'm focused on setting the board up for all of these jumps, I lose sight of the goal of the game. It's to get all of your marbles from one side to another. So as you help your doctor clients build wealth, you're balancing the needs of today and the needs of tomorrow. Your clients might be more focused on today than tomorrow. And when that happens, You want to just remind them of this desired future that the doctor wants for himself or herself. Remind him or her how you can help get there. If they make a financial mistake, help them get back on their feet and remind them why they are doing this. So if you do these 7 steps, this will set you up for stronger financial leadership. And please keep in mind my prescription for health. Be who you are, know what you know, and do what you need to do. The way that you provide financial leadership is uniquely yours. Lean into your authentic self. Do the things that you know that you should be doing, even if they're uncomfortable, even if you don't feel like it. You can then model the kind of behaviors that are going to help your doctor clients get to where they want to go. Successfully and graciously engage in this dance of wealth. So let us just summarize the steps of the connection prescription again. Set the emotional thermostat. Keep the calm and don't catch the chaos. Number 2, let them take center stage. This is about the doctor and the doctor's journey. You want to focus on their experience and see what it is that they really want. Number 3, shield them from complexity. Keep things simple. Don't talk about the suture material. Next, master the fine art of verbal persuasion. Understand that you can learn how to be a more charismatic leader. Next, act from your wisest self. Understand that as you're helping your doctor clients build wealth, you might stumble upon some financial trauma from childhood. You might stumble on some trauma from an interaction you had with the doctor in your childhood. If you see people just behaving irrationally, like it's not quite them or it's not quite you, ask yourself, is there anything that happened in my childhood that reminds me of this? Next, know your limits. Know what you can and cannot do comfortably, and build a network of people so that all of you stay in your zone of genius. And last, know where you are headed. Your doctor client has painted a vision of their financial future. They've described to you why this is important. Sometimes it is hard to stay the course and assume the financial habits that are going to help you get there. However, you can keep that vision in mind and remind the doctor of that vision when they either forget, they've backslid, or they need some inspiration to keep on going. So invest in financial leadership. What you say and do makes a big difference. I want to thank you for your commitment to working with doctors. Doctors want and need your help today. Thank you for listening. If you found value in this, please feel welcome to share this with colleagues and friends. This is Dr. Vicki signing off for now. I just want to remind you that you do important work. Keep on showing up and standing out and serving well. You are appreciated. I'll see you in the next episode.